And next time on Janai Hospital. I need you, Baran. More than any person has needed a person. But, Doctor, what about your mate? Oh, it stopped loving me a long time ago. Can't you see you are the only it for me? But, Doctor, Nurse Lemus and I, well, we've got a fibrous husk on the way, and what will become of the husk? Please don't go through with it. Please, tell me you won't. You'll never be the same. My mind is made up. I've been hiding this part of myself for far too long. I am having gender reassignment.
I'll try to understand, but tell me this much. Which gender did you decide on?
Welcome to episode 14 of Primetime UGC. We've got another great show for you this time around. Our guest author will be Chooch99 and a review of his mission. Kirkfat has brought you the first in his Back to Basics series on Foundry Essentials. We've even managed to slip in a couple of new commercials, and we'll end the show with our new live segment, The Great Link. But first, Casmodian is up with the news. See you on the other side.
And now, the news, brought to you tonight by Terran Shuttle Insurance. In the news this week, new uniforms added to the C-Store, teases of Season 7, spotlight missions, and more. Leading off tonight, new uniforms were added to the C-Store since our last broadcast. These uniforms consist of the racing uniforms featured in Voyager. These uniforms are available at a cost of 500 Zen and are account-wide unlocks. Additionally, the Admiral's uniform from the early seasons of The Next Generation were added. These also cost 500 Zen, and if you did not pick them up when it was made available, the jumpsuit-style uniforms featured in the first two seasons are also available. Hopefully these will be added to the Foundry soon, but the track record for this proves that this will probably not be the case. Teases of Season 7. The first new concept art of Season 7 was made available. These concepts consist of a Romulan colony potentially being attacked by the Thalians, and concept art for the Azure Nebula, a region of space bordering Romulan space, and actively featured in the not-canon to Star Trek Online Destiny novel trilogy.
Yes, that's right. You could save 15% or more on shuttle insurance by switching to Terran.
This episode of Primetime UGC brought to you by Terran Shuttle Insurance. Like a Gorn neighbor, Terran is there. And later, 5 ways to tell if you're caught inside of a temporal loop. But first, the news. And later, 5 ways to tell if you're caught inside of a temporal loop. But first, the news. And later, 5 ways to tell if you're caught inside of a temporal loop. But first, the news. Oh no, not again. Spotlight missions. 2 spotlight missions have been chosen since our last broadcast as well. These are Raktajino in a Jar by Drogon 1701 and One Too Many by XR377. Also, Foundry Challenge 4 voting has begun and will conclude on September 26th. Voting is open for players to choose the next winner. Stay tuned, and we will reveal this choice in a future episode. A new Starbase feature project has also begun. These are cosmetic interior additions that, for the Federation Starbase, will add history for the vessels named Enterprise, and for the Klingon side, it upgrades their transporter facilities and adds banners to their starbases. Star Trek Online also linked up with Raptor. Raptor, a popular player reward site, has coordinated with Star Trek Online to provide a couple of rewards to players who join their service and link Facebook accounts with them. These rewards, a Gumato, a baby Mugato-like creature from the same planet, and a holodeck bundle consisting of a one-time dilithium reward, a very rare space or ground weapon, and dual team or player batteries. This latter is only available on a single account, whereas the Gumato is a account-wide unlock. Also, the Thalian lockbox will be going away shortly. These lockboxes are scheduled to go out of the game on September 20th, so if you're collecting items from them, stock up now and remember that the prizes may be obtained from them after they stop dropping. A new Ask Cryptic also went live this past week. Not much in the way of Foundry answers, but one point is that fleet marks are again tied to the Foundry Daily Wrapper mission. You may also earn 50 fleet marks in addition to the dilithium or item reward that you normally earn. It is also hoped that Foundry spotlighting technology will be integrated into the Star Trek UI within next month. Although, as all things are with this, subject to change with little to no notice. In the very near future, it is also believed that a Foundry asset thread will be created by Zeronius Rex. This thread is alluded to by executive producer Dan Stahl and will go in sometime after a release of Update of Assets. This thread will be used to coordinate additional asset requests for the game. And finally, a new poll went live on the site for the first time in ages, and we encourage you all to go to this poll and to vote for the Foundry. Or whatever you desire, as long as it's the Foundry. And that tonight is the news, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to Kirk's Fat Assets. This week, we'll take a look at a new ground map available for Foundry authors. It's called Napata Desert, and it was originally made for the Romulan featured episodes. Let's start with the good. What I absolutely love about this map is how generic it is, in the sense that it's a random ship crashed in a desert. I could see so much story potential here, and authors should be able to use this set in many different ways. I could even imagine a time travel mission to 19th century Arizona. The canyons are beautiful, and so much could be done with sky layers to change the feel of the map. With a red sky, perhaps this map might even pass as Mars, if we ignore the cacti. Overall, it's a great map, but it's not without its problems. While exploring it, I found myself running into invisible walls all over the place. I really wish that Cryptic would take these invisible walls out. Also, like the TOS interior, the map is divided into different sections, so you'll have to use each section for different purposes. Lastly, and I don't know if this is true for the published version, but the mini-map is completely black. Hopefully that will get fixed. Otherwise, it's a big and beautiful map, and I hope to see authors use it in very creative ways. So go forth, Foundry authors, take us back to 1885.
He's alive! The Doc's alive! He's in the Old West, but he's alive!
21 gigawatts!
Tonight on Primetime UGC, our author interview is Chooch99. And here he is. Welcome, Chooch, to Primetime UGC.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And we'll jump right in with my typical first question. When did you begin playing STO, and when did you get into the Foundry?
I actually started the first day of open beta with all the bugs that everybody seems to have similar stories about. First successful day where I didn't keep getting kicked was probably a week later, but yeah, generally during open beta. And ever since then, I've subscribed nonstop.
And what was your first experience with Foundry?
I'd already done a lot of UGC, and I was going to school for making games for 3D. In fact, convinced my teacher to let me use the Foundry for extra credit, which was kind of cool, because it followed everything that they were trying to teach us in making MMO-type games, and when I went back to college for that. So that was pretty cool, but I made a 3-part mission that I never did recreate, and it was a little, seemed to be well received. And I did a lot of tabletop role playing ever since Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot, running missions I made up for groups of people that come and play, and I would call that my starting experience with telling stories for and making up characters, NPCs to support the story. So I guess that's why I've gotten used to making things up. When the Foundry came out, I couldn't wait to get started and sharing some ideas, and I wanted to make missions that we didn't see in the regular game, like things that were more true to Trek that maybe Cryptic missed the boat on a little bit. No offense to them. For example, let me think. Things that are missing, like emotion in the sense of the NPCs' personalities and backstories, things that happen to them and how that affects them. Maybe some adult interactive choices that are not too risque, but a little more mature for romantic encounters with NPCs. I've started kind of experimenting with that. I'm very, very careful not to cross certain lines to raise red flags so that I lose my ability to do this. But I feel that there's room to kick it up a notch for the more. There's a lot of adults that play this game, and I don't feel we have to be too PG. But at the same time, Star Trek has always had those aspects as much as space battles, in my opinion. So I wanted to do things like that. Just try things that we haven't seen in missions, that because they're maybe being a little too careful with the ratings, and it's a game. But at the same time, just try to tell a good story. That's the biggest thing for me. I look at the swan in the middle of the ice sculpture, and I try to, whatever gets in my way with the Foundry's limits or tools, I try to picture what I want to happen in the story and use whatever tools are available. And if they're not, I work around it until I can chisel away and get that swan to come out. That's probably the best way I can describe it.
What Trek series most inspires your work, and why?
Deep Space Nine, for sure, is my favorite. The Federation has always come across as, have all these ideals that they preach to everybody in the TNG era. And that was all nice and fine. But it was never put to the test. Even with the Borg, it wasn't put to the test as much as it was in DS9. And how far would they be willing to go to keep it that way? When things came close to ending. Certain episodes like Pale Moonlight, where Sisko made some controversial decisions, things like that showed how far they were willing to go and where they drew their moral line in the sand and said that, what is the Federation? Is it an ideal? There was a lot of stuff going on in that show that was more than just space battles, and that's what I loved about it. I'd have to say Deep Space Nine.
Do you have a favorite theme that you like to revisit when making a mission?
A theme? I try to tie my stories somehow, all of them together in some way, even if it's not obvious at first. Whether it's a recurring NPC that's from both arcs or some reference. But I'm kind of trying this. I think that's my thing. I try to make them all a shared, referred to. They're separate stories, but yet they kind of have some foot in the door back and forth to each other. At least I try to keep it that way.
Who do you write your missions for?
I think most Foundry authors are going to say that they write for themselves. I'd be lying if I say that's not generally what happens. But as I started writing, like, say, the first story arc, the comments and responses I got from players, good or bad, would often influence the direction I took it with the next one, because I'm not trying to please everybody to get plays, but sometimes people would have some good ideas, or they'd say, oh, I love this NPC, I would like to see them come back. So I would try, see what I could do to make them happy while making myself happy. And sometimes it was a happy marriage of the two. So, if that answers the question.
Beyond Star Trek, what sources do you draw your inspiration from for your stories?
Personal experiences from life. The missions you guys are going to review, Secret Academy and Needs of the Many Voices, actually, I wrote those during one of the worst times of my life as far as a personal series of bad things that were happening to me right after my father died and some other stuff was going on. And so I think that when people respond to how much they like those stories with the characters and what's going on with them, there's a Vulcan character who lost her father during the Dominion War. She's a cadet, and in the second mission there's a sort of a flashback to that when she's a child. And that came from my losing my dad recently when that happened. So I was drawing from my own. I think that's the best thing you can do if you have something bad happen. Any artist is use it. Don't throw it under the rug. Use it. If you're doing something, if you're writing, if you're making music, and you have something emotional happen, I think that it's fair to say that the best songs, the best stories come from personal experience, and that's an example right there.
Of the missions that you've played or had the opportunity to experience, what's the one that stands out to you most that as an oh my god sort of thing? It can be your own missions.
Balnar Moon, of course, Alamac 30. Mostly with the engineering aspect of his construction of the shuttle bay and the Earth space dock. I was amazed at what he was able to pull off, and I couldn't have I don't think I could have the patience to go that crazy. I like to use a lot of pre-made maps. I'll edit the heck out of them, but I don't have the patience to do what he does. He's got it there. That's his thing. If we could work together and he did the sets and I did the story, I think it'd be pretty awesome. It'd be great to work with someone and be able to do something like that. We were supposed to be able to. Havraha had one, Mud's Weapons. I loved it. I loved it. It was neat. I loved the way he had the NPCs act and make your bridge officers act. I like it when authors are willing to make your bridge officers act a certain way, but some people do get carried away and make like a Vulcan suddenly go acting emotional, and they aren't noticing that might happen. He was careful about it, but yeah, I like it when liberties are taken, but not gone too far, and it's cute little story things. Yeah, I would have to say that one, Mud's Weapons.
In a perfect world, what would be the one addition that you would love to see to the Foundry's editor?
Definitely cutscene creator, and they do the Star Trek titles like they show in the when you do the events and the.
Thank you.
Oh, I would love to see my missions when the war began or whichever mission pop up like that as a title when you're warping in or whatever. That and just being able to do the cutscenes. That would be sweet. I know we'd have to use subtitles because obviously I don't think we're going to be able to throw in our own audios. You never know. Maybe we could do the text-to-speech thing. The text-to-speech technology is getting really impressive. Maybe someday we can actually pull that off. You never know. But, yeah, the cutscene editor, I would have a field day with that. I'd go back to all my old missions and do a lot of editing. But the title thing, Jupiter uniforms. I wish at least give us the Jupiter uniforms. Those are the Enterprise F uniforms. They kind of becoming more official. Cryptics putting all those uniforms on all their NPCs for their remastered missions. I think it's safe to say that's becoming the official mission. How about letting us have them?
You've mentioned a project that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, as you may know, I'm a staff writer for Subspace Radio, and they hired me to be a staff writer. We write fleet ads. So if any fleets out there want to get promoted and say, get people to join, because we've had a lot of success stories. I write, and so does a couple other people, that we make ads for fleets to promote them, and we play them like a radio ad with skits, whatever, and that's my job. DJ Johnner, the manager, brought me on board to do that because of the fact that he realized that with all the Foundry missions I made, creativity, higher from that. When I started doing that, I asked them why they'd never tried to do an audio series before, and they said, well, they thought about it, but no one's ever really taken it beyond just talking about it. We have a lot of talented people that help with making the ads that I write, so we have, in my opinion, wasted material. Not wasted, but could be used more than just for ads. So I thought about, what if we made an audio series that was true Star Trek Online's lore, maybe a shared universe where we can reference Foundry missions, make it tie in like Balnar Moon or mention Helna, or maybe Reunion. We can reference something that happened in one of your episodes of Reunion, so that when people are listening to the audio series, which we've already got underway, I've got an ad, there's a link in the forums, and we made a teaser ad, but we have a lot of people involved, and it's open to people to come play minor or big roles as the time goes. It's seasonal format. It's called Star Trek Starfinder. It's about a ship that has an AI captain. It's an experiment. It's an Odyssey class. And there's a new region of space that opens up in the backyard of the Alpha Quadrant called the Outback. And there's a mystery behind why the anomalies that hit it have suddenly gone away. And Starfleet suspects it's the Iconians' hiding spot coming back, so they need to investigate. The Klingons send in people. It's going to bring back the old Explorer, New Worlds and everything, but there's a lot of twists to this story. The goal is to have the pilot released by Christmas time. It's looking good so far. We have a lot of talented and professional voice actors involved. I'm writing it, but we're going to have other writers writing episodes, and possibly as time goes on, I might open up the door to ask Foundry authors, use your skill, submit a script. Once you start hearing the series, if you like it and you like the story and the lore, and you get a feel for the characters, If you feel like you have the confidence to do so, like even yourself, feel free to shoot me a script concept idea, and I might say go for it, and we might use it.
Now it's time for our wrap-up questionnaire, the Primetime 5. We'll ask 5 questions for you to answer, all multiple choice.
Your answers will tell our viewers a little bit more about you. First up, Coke or Pepsi?
Pepsi.
Constitution or Galaxy class?
Galaxy.
Kirk or Picard?
Kirk.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Klingon or Romulan?
Romulan.
Okay, very interesting. All right, that's going to do it for this week's author interview. Thank you so much, Chooch, for joining us. Please
Thanks for having
keep
me.
giving us content. Good evening and welcome to Primetime UGC's mini mission review. This time around we did a 2-part mission entitled Secret Academy and the Needs of Many Voices by Chooch99.
We're reviewing both missions as one, as it seemed to us that if the Foundry had not had a 10-map limit, this would have been a single mission. Let's begin with the story.
We will refrain from divulging too much, but the player is enlisted into an ongoing anti-Borg exercise involving the use of a virtual Borg unimatrix at a starbase near the Mutara Nebula. Throw in some very special cadets, as well as a few familiar characters, and the action begins rather quickly. Chooch99 is adept at bringing light dialogue and humor into a heavy situation and having them mesh perfectly. Each character is different, and you feel as though you know enough about them without having to deal with walls of text. I did spot a few minor typos that did not distract.
We loved the story, which was interesting, charming, funny, and quirky. This author handles humor very well, and I found myself laughing out loud. We also really enjoyed Chooch's style of not taking his mission too seriously. The characters were great, the plot was solid, and the uncomfortable moments were delightful. We gave story 5 well-deserved stars. Now on to map design.
Maps were well done, and Chooch used them to their fullest, especially in the last maps of his story, guiding the player through several unimatrices on one single environment. We never felt we needed to travel very far to achieve the next objective.
The maps had lots of details, and posing and placement of NPCs was top-notch. However, a lot of these details were clustered in small areas with lots of battles. It made some of the sets feel a little cramped. Map gets 4 stars. Now on to tech.
Tech was solid and used only to arrive at the author's goal. I cannot recall any effects thrown in that were meant purely to dazzle, and that's a good thing. These missions did not need shoring up.
Still, this mission was chock full of effects and interesting uses of props and triggers. The setup was really well done. There were a few times when I felt like a map-based pop-up dialogue might have been a bit more useful than an NPC default text, but that's probably just a difference in style. Tech managed 4.5 stars. Let's finish up with difficulty.
We're a bit split in this area. We both agree that adjustments might benefit this mission. I really had quite a lot of fun with the fighting in this one. Ground battles were more challenging than space, but as an engineer, I have so many weapons and shields at my disposal that I could mop the floor with these mobs. Although the space battles seemed a bit easier than one might expect, given the particular enemy. It was hard at times to maneuver in a few cramped areas.
I died a lot on ground, but I always do. It was also very strange, though, that the Borg cubes were so easy. A cube didn't last more than 20 seconds for me. Perhaps this could be tweaked a bit? Otherwise, the overall experience of this 2-parter was very positive. We recommend it be played and enjoyed. Difficulty gets 3.5 stars. That's our mini mission review for this episode. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Coming up after Primetime UGC is this week's Quadrant-Wide Cinema, where you get to sample the best interspecies entertainment available. We're all grateful to Don Dathon for calling this meeting. We all know him as a modest man, although this is the first time we've ever actually met. Yes, too modest. He had all the judges and politicians in his pocket and refused to share them. A refusal is not the act of a friend. Surely you could submit a bill for such services. After all, we're not communists.
Santino,
His suit red. Huh?
Luca, when the fishes slept.
What the hell are you talking about? The old man's freaking crazy.
Michael and McCluskey and Louis in the Bronx. Bazzini, his army.
I told you, there's no reasoning with him, Bafangul!
Waltz, his horse had uncovered.
Hello, Stoke community, and welcome to Foundry Essentials. This next set of tutorials that should run with each episode of Primetime UGC will be a Back to Basics special. We're going to go back to the very basics of the Foundry and do a walkthrough. And hopefully this walkthrough will benefit new Foundry authors, people who are struggling to learn the toolset, and people who may be frustrated with the existing tutorials because they're now outdated. So what I'm going to do in this short tutorial is I'm just going to give a very basic introduction to the Foundry, and the next set of tutorials we're going to start building our mission together, and by the end of it we'll both have missions constructed, and you should have a pretty good understanding of how the Foundry works. Okay, so this is where you start. This is the first screen, and you'll want to click Create Content. And before you get to this point, if you're a brand new Stowe player, you should have at least played the tutorial and earned 10,000 dilithium. You're going to need the dilithium to buy project slots if you're a free-to-play player. So you'll see this screen. If it's your first time logging in, you may have some character slots, or you may need to buy Foundry project slots. As far as I know, if nothing has changed, silver players, which are the free-to-play players, get 0 Foundry slots, so they have to buy Foundry slots with 10,000 dilithium. Gold members who do subscribe to the game get 8 slots. So once you have your slots, and once you have your character, you'll log on. And I should say that when you think about this character, don't even worry about it. I mean, once we entered that screen, we went right to the Foundry, so nothing that we do with this character is going to affect the normal game. It's really just a throwaway character that we create in order to test our maps. It doesn't take away from your other character slots in the main game. It's simply just a tune that you need to create in order to test your Foundry missions. And I should also say that if you're building a Federation mission, you need to have a Federation tune. And if you're building a Klingon mission, you need to have a Klingon tune, because you can't use a Fed to test a Klingon mission and vice versa. So if you've decided to build a Federation mission, create a Federation tune and then create a new project. And when you create a new project, you can specify that is Starfleet and give the project a name. Now you can change the name at any time, so you can give it just some kind of random name. I've already created the project that I want to use, and so I'll go ahead and load that now. Okay, so here we are. This is the opening screen of the Foundry. Up here it tells you your mission is not published. There's your mission name. Here's a project ID, which is a unique designation of your mission. You can specify the language. You can also change the allegiance of your mission. This description box is the first thing that a Stowe player will see when they're browsing UGC missions. So we'll deal with that later when we really finish our mission and we're ready to sell it to the public. We'll deal with this screen. This screen is just simply private author notes, so don't worry about it or put stuff in there to remind yourself later. Players will never see whatever you put in this box. On this side of the Foundry, this is where all the action happens. Now you'll notice immediately when you launch the Foundry, it has all these errors. Not necessarily errors, but gentle reminders that, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And it's basically telling you what you need to do before you publish your mission. And that is, this information must be filled in, which refers to the description. This box needs to be filled in. You need to specify a costume, etc., etc. We'll deal with all that later. Don't worry right now about the task that it tells you to complete. We can take care of all of that later. Now, here you'll notice we have various tabs. This is the tab that you originally started on. Here is what we call the storyboard. This is where all your objectives are laid out. And you'll notice the objectives here on the right. The objectives really start right here with interact with object. You can interact with an object on a map, you can kill enemies on a map, you can have a dialogue, or interact with a pop-up dialogue. We'll deal with the differences of that later. Or you can reach a marker, and a marker is a circle, basically a radius that a player has to reach in order to advance the story. Now, with the Season 6 updates, Cryptic has done a lot where you can work mainly in the Story tab. I wouldn't really recommend it. It's kind of confusing, and it's counterproductive in some ways to really start here. Instead, you'll probably want to start with the Maps tab. You'll want to create your maps, you'll want to put all the stuff on your maps, and create the characters for your maps, put all the stuff in place before you really get going with, hey, go talk to this person, or hey, go talk to that person. So that's the difference between the Story tab and the Map tab. The Story tab consists of a bunch of tasks, and that just tells the Foundry, hey, player needs to go do this, followed by go do that. The Map tab is where you'll spend most of your time, because you'll spend most of your time just building sets, or putting down objects, or changing triggers, and all that stuff. And you'll also notice there are different types of maps that you can create. So if we create a map, we could create a space map. And this option we can make a custom map. So you can put the planet in yourself, you can put the backdrop, which is kind of like the sky of space. You can put that in, etc. Or you have these pre-made maps, which are cryptic maps. And those load for you with all the details in them, and you can use them as you see fit. There are also outdoor maps. You don't have the ability to customize these, but you have quite a few of the alien ones, and the Borg, and Crystal Cities, and all these different maps that you can use for your mission. Or you have indoor maps, which are interiors. We'll get into that more later when we actually start to build our mission. But that is the Map tab. It's where you can put spawn points, you can put respawn points, lay down your planets, put in your details, etc. And we'll deal with quite a bit of that as we go. The other tab to think about here is the Dialogue tab. Now, don't worry too much about this for now, because the game will take you to it when you need to do something with it. So don't worry about creating dialogues here and messing with this very much, because the Foundry will take you to it. The last part that we're dealing with is costumes. You don't have to create costumes for every NPC, which means the characters or the enemies in your map. You don't have to create costumes because there's lots of default cryptic costumes that you can use. And the costume tab has a pretty restrictive limitation on how many costumes you can create. But this is where you need to go if you do have a unique character that you want to create in your mission. And creating that character is very, very similar to creating your own toon in the regular game, so you shouldn't have much problems dealing with that. Otherwise, that is really my bare bones basic introduction to the Foundry. Next episode of Foundry Essentials, we'll start to build our map together, and then I'll teach you more that you need to know about item placement and all the different explanations for X, Y, and Z values. But for now, just get in here and mess around with the different tabs, and if you're feeling so bold, try to create something. Try to create a map. Or put Borg battleships in the map and just play test the map to see what they look like. Okay, this has been Foundry Essentials, Part 1 of an Introduction to the Foundry. Stay tuned for Part 2 next time, and we'll really get into the details. Okay, see ya!
Now it's time for Published in Primetime, our bi-weekly listing of all the newest missions. And here they are.